The only question on today's episode is, can Matt Lawson possibly one-up his 2024 preseason targets episode here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, presented by FanDuel and the FanDuel Sportsbook? He is at NBA Dynasty ADP. Whether you like it or not, you are the voice of Dynasty Fantasy Basketball out in this industry that we are all working so damn hard to keep fun. Matt Lawson, welcome back to the program, dude. How you been besides, sick from a kid?
Dan, I'm doing great, and it's been about a year since I've been on. I think it was that My Guy show was maybe in August of last year, so we were getting out early with some good ones. We'll talk about that in a second. But much like Kawhi Leonard, I've been on a 1-year no-show contract with this podcast. No appearances necessary, just quietly collecting paychecks in the background based on last year's performance. But that's up. I'm back, and we're going to get straight into it. This is going to be an episode of Dan Besbris Finds Out, because I'm going to be giving you my 5 My Guys this year after last year. Let's start, at the beginning. We were touting Jalen Williams, telling you that he was at least a 3rd-round pick, and Jalen delivered for us, especially that early portion of the season when he was the only guy standing with Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren sitting out. We told you that Darius Garland was going to be having a comeback season after breaking his face the year before. He came back strong, looked as good as ever. And then we gave you 2 of the biggest and baddest sleepers of the entire season in both Amen Thompson and Deni Avdija. Both of them crushed their ADPs, their pre-ranks, and they delivered an incredible season for you. So we're going to try to duplicate that today. We're going to try to give you that huge advantage where you're getting the running laps, getting rounds of value above your league mates. I think I've got some good ones for you. We're going to put it together in this one.
That was way better than I could have done. You've been awake for a couple of hours. I know you told me you're like fighting a nasty illness right now, but you look amazing. You're like ready to roll. And you said it's just a lot of caffeine.
Right.
We just got the kids to school. My eyes are still like 72% open right now. So this is outstanding timing to have Matt unleashed on the pod. And I'll say this, even if you give us nothing this year, last year should cover us for at least a couple of seasons, because that was a ridiculous hit rate on a My Guys episode. But we're going to dive right into it. Folks, if you like what you're seeing so far, hit that like and subscribe button. If you need to wait till later to figure out if you do, feel free. That's also fine. You can find, again, Matt on social at NBA Dynasty ADP. I am at Dan Besbris on the socials. I legitimately, as I do with all these My Guys episodes, I don't know what we're about to talk about. My job is to very quickly get a Yahoo player page displayed on the YouTube screen for those that are watching. So, Matt, you have 5 names. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with my perspective on this. I think part of the reason that sometimes I can have a outlier, different view that gives you a little bit of an edge is that at my core, I'm a dynasty fantasy basketball player. That's the kind of content that I put out. That's the perspective that I bring to this. And some of that is, doing both. It's both thinking about the future, years of future projection for players, but also thinking about the now. So I have to be able to think about both of those from a dynasty perspective. It's not just about what a guy's going to do in 3 years. You also care about what's going to happen this year. But I'm always thinking, especially with young players, about what does the ceiling, the prime of this player look like? What kind of fantasy production can we expect in the future? And if there are big leaps likely ahead for a player in their stat set, sometimes those leaps come earlier than anticipated. And if you can be early on it, like we were on some of those guys last year, the Amen Thompsons, the Deni Avdijas of the world, that's where you clean up. And I think I've got some guys here, it varies, but a few of them that where there's future projection that we are seeing in the dynasty space that could come this year. And I think that's where you can get the biggest values in redraft, by having that dynasty perspective. That's why I always advocate for people to play in a dynasty league, at least one, because it gives you a whole different view of players, and it lets you see kind of tomorrow's news today when it comes to seeing where players are going to be headed in the future. You already know the player pool. You know the future breakouts for future seasons in redraft if you've played dynasty. The first one I want to talk about is a dynasty darling that I kind of can't believe that the redraft community isn't getting more excited about. Yeah, that's right. It's the 2025 number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft. It's Cooper Flagg. And I came into this season thinking there's going to be massive hype around Cooper Flagg. This guy's fantasy stat set is unlike anything we have ever seen before from a pre-draft prospect. It's flawless. There are no issues in his 9-category stat set based on what we saw from him at Duke. And this was a season at Duke last year where he was he was 17 years old coming into the season and was able to take the reins of one of the most talented rosters in college basketball from day one. Yeah, there were a few bumps in the road at the very beginning of the season. He immediately figured it out, running the pick and roll for this team when that really wasn't what Cooper Flagg did coming out of Mount Verde Academy on a superstar-laden roster in high school. He wasn't necessarily that guy. We thought of him more as kind of like a two-way player. People were making comparisons to Andre Karlinko. And what we really have is the next power wing on-ball creator, a guy who's going to have the ball in his hands like a Jason Tatum and be a do-it-all defensive playmaker and event creator on top of it. So if you do the math in your head, you're getting the points, rebounds, assists, threes. Oh, he gets steals and blocks too. And guess what? Last year, he shot above 51% on two-pointers at Duke. He was a good field goal percentage guy. Didn't hurt you there. And by the way, he shot 84% from the free throw line at Duke as well. So there's this full 9-category stat set. And you'd say, okay, Matt, but he's a rookie and he's only 18 years old right now. Like, what can we really expect? Well, he just so happened to land in a situation in Dallas where Kyrie Irving's not available. There is no playmaking, no shot creation available on this roster to speak of. People are trying to talk themselves into D'Angelo Russell in the year of our Lord 2025 when they look at the Dallas Mavericks roster. Dallas last year in the play-in game was basically running Najee Marshall at point guard because they had nothing. He was just going out there putting up floaters because they didn't know what to do to be able to create a shot. It's not Anthony Davis's game to go out there and create a bunch of shots for himself and others. He's going to need to be set up. We've seen that across the last number of years in Los Angeles with LeBron James. So with Kyrie Irving down, there is just a complete void here that needs to be able to be filled. And the person to fill it, based on what Jason Kidd has told us and based on what common sense is telling us, is Cooper Flagg. So you take that stat set. Yes, the field goal percentage and turnovers might be rookie level this year. So that could be the bumpiness in the 9-category stat set. But otherwise, he's going to be neutral to very positive across all 7 other categories. And I think this could be a season where he's playing 33 to 34 minutes a night, often having the ball go through him offensively. And you're going to be getting around 19 points, a couple threes, 6 rebounds, 4.5 assists. I think you could be around 1.3 steals and a block. So you're getting that combined over 2 steals and blocks on top of it. And this is a guy who gets to the free throw line because he does attack the rim. And I think he could shoot 83, 84% from the line based on what we've seen from him on a huge sample last year at Duke. So this is immense opportunity. And guess what? The pre-rank around number 49, the hype, it's only dragging the ADP up around 44. You're getting him in the 4th round. He should at least be a 3rd round pick just based on the hype, just based on the name. And you're getting him in the 4th round right now. Now that could get pulled up a little bit as we get closer to the season, but I think the hype train already would have left the station based on him being the number 1 pick, being him being the guy that everyone was tanking for last year. And we're just not seeing it. So for me, I think Cooper Flagg in my rankings, he could creep into 2nd round value this year, especially as everything clicks. I think as the season goes on, he's going to be figuring things out as great prospects, great players in the NBA do. We've seen it with Anthony Edwards. We've seen it with Victor Wembanyama, where by the time you got to the second half of the season, they were starting to look like that full-fledged star that we expected them to be. I think we could see something similar with Flagg this year because I don't think the Kyrie Irving cavalry is coming down the hill to be able to save the Mavericks this year. I don't expect to see Kyrie, at least not in the fantasy portion of the regular season. I think we're going to get a lot of Cooper Flagg, and you should be getting a lot of Cooper Flagg in your drafts.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it from the perspective of like going in the 40s is very high for a rookie, but there isn't a lot of chatter about him. And that's kind of odd because you'd think that that would be the kind of thing that the NBA would want or want to be pushing right now. You don't think that the 40s is early enough is what I'm gathering. And so what kind of beginning, because this is an interesting one. I haven't talked that much about Cooper Flagg on the podcast for obvious reasons, because I mostly just look at old dudes and salivate. It's a very weird way to live. What do you think the arc might be for him? Like starts in the, I don't know what range, and then pushes his way past that. I think the one time I talked about him recently, I was like, yeah, he probably starts the season behind this 44-50 ranking. I can't remember exactly what I said on the show, but I think I said that by mid-season, he's probably better than that. But it feels like you're thinking that might even come sooner.
Yeah, I think we could get that top 50-ish production in the early months because of the volume and the role. And I think it's going to be dragged down a little bit by efficiency because this is a lot to put on the plate of an 18-year-old. He's going to be
Right.
18 until late December. He reclassified into this class. He should just be starting college basketball this year, but he pushed up his career to be able to do this. But he was already National Player of the Year because he figured it out at Duke in exactly the same situation. Their first couple of games, it was a little bumpy. People were questioning why John Shire was giving so much to Flagg on offense. They didn't really think he was capable of it, and he was capable of it. Every test he figured out. Every time the level of difficulty got higher, he raised his level, and that's what great players do. I think he's going to do that. I think that you're going to get that top 50-ish. Maybe it's only top 75 in the first few weeks. We see young players playing on the perimeter in the NBA in the rookie seasons get overwhelmed in the early, highly competitive portion of the season. Defenses are so much better in October, November, December than they are in January, February, March. And you also see these guys, have to go against full strength lineups a lot more than what you see later on in the season. So that will be a challenge, but the volume itself is going to be there. You're going to have a lot of shots. You're going to have a lot of opportunity for rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, because the minutes are going to have to be there immediately too. There just isn't anybody to be able to even play guard on this team. You have D'Angelo Russell, Brandon Williams, the depths of the rotation. You've got Dante Exum, Jaden Hardy. There's just not a lot out there other than Klay Thompson standing and catching and shoot 3-pointers and, kind of zombified running his way down the court to be able to try to play defense. They don't have anything. This roster is not constructed all that well. So thank you, Nico Harrison. So ultimately, it's really on Flagg to figure out how to make things work with Anthony Davis to have a functional offense on this team that I think will be pretty good defensively too. Flagg is a really good defensive player. They're going to be able to put Anthony Davis out there with Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford, but it's going to be a lot of rock fight games where a whole bunch of offensive burden is going to be put on Flagg. And I think that's going to mean fantasy production, even if it's a little bit uneven from an efficiency and turnover perspective early, it's going to get a lot better by the second half as the competitive level of the NBA drops a little bit and Flagg starts to level up and figure out the NBA game.
Let's go to player number 2. I wanted to spend a little longer on Flagg because he isn't someone I've talked about much on this show. So that was a little bonus Cooper. We are talking to Matt Lawson at NBA Dynasty ADP. Player number 2 on the board is...
All right. Kingy already took this one, but I think he deserves to be talked about twice because what is going on right now with Ausar Thompson's ADP and pre-rank is a war crime. This is unbelievable to me. And there's only like 3 weeks left of drafts, so I don't think there's even enough time for this to course correct itself. What are we doing here? Ausar Thompson right now just hovering inside of the top 100 in pre-rank and ADP. Yeah, that's probably going to course correct a little bit as some of the buzzy quotes are coming out of Detroit Pistons media day in training camp about how good he looks with the ball in his hands, how they need to give him more of an offensive role, how important he's going to be to this roster. It's coming from Cade Cunningham. It's coming from JB Bickerstaff. They are all seeing it. But if you were watching the Detroit Pistons last year, you already saw it. The only reason that we are not getting full hype train Ausar Thompson right now, even though there are a lot of content creators who are screaming it, is because the minutes were suppressed last year. But that is a context that we can understand. We know what happened there. He spends the entire offseason not able to participate in basketball activities with the team because of a blood clotting issue that is now resolved. He's able to come onto the team kind of after the season has already started and start working himself into shape. So month by month, you start to see the minutes come up. 15 minutes in November, 18 in December, 21 in January, 24 across February, March, and then 28 in April. And I think this year we're looking at 30 plus minutes per game for Ausar Thompson. And all you have to do is carry over last year's rates to 30 minutes per game. And you're looking at a guy who can easily be top 50 in production. I've got him in the 40s where people are currently taking Cooper Flagg and should be taking him higher. Ausar Thompson in that range is what makes sense to me, but you can get him in the 90s right now. So this is a smash. And I get it. Some people are going to look at it and say, well, I can't project that kind of leap. When you watch what the Pistons did with him last year, you realize it doesn't matter, just like with his identical twin brother, that he's a non-shooter. Because spacing is more than just shooting. Spacing is the ability to draw attention from the defense because of the threat that you present offensively. And if you watch the playoff games between the New York Knicks and the Detroit Pistons, you saw Ausar Thompson hanging out in the dunker spot with Jalen Duren on the court. Jalen Duren would get the ball in the short roll, And if the Knicks didn't have someone tagged and completely on Ausar Thompson, he was up at the rim, taking a lob within a split second, and no one was able to get there in time. And that could happen repeatedly because of the level of nuclear athleticism that the Thompson twins bring to the table. Ausar Thompson brings that to the table. He's a demon in transition. He does have the ability to be able to handle the ball like his brother. He hasn't gotten to show that quite a bit yet, but I think you're going to see more of it this year, and they need his attacking defense on the perimeter. They don't have that otherwise on this roster. That's what he did against Jalen Brunson in the playoffs. I think he's going to be necessary to their starting lineup. He will start. I think he's going to play 30-plus minutes. The only enemy to Ausar Thompson's playing time is going to be the foul rate, which was, from a per-possession basis, similar to Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart last year. It was lower as a rookie. I think he kind of went all out in limited minutes last season, and you might see a little bit of a reduction in that aggression that lowers the foul rate as well. But I don't think it's going to reduce the event creation, because this guy was right there with Dyson Daniels in deflections last season, that on a per possession basis. That's the level of defender and event creator that we are talking about. He can be up at the top of the league in steals this year. He's going to give you rebounds and assists as well. He's going to give you blocks. He can give you field goal percentage that helps you in that category. I think this is going to be a huge season for Ausar Thompson, and he's the screaming value of the draft board that I can see this season.
Yeah, I can try to play devil's advocate a little bit, but everybody knows I already had him on the Breakouts board also. So you and I agree on this one. I think you might even be, much like with Amen Thompson last year, I thought I was high on him, and then you were like, no, Dan, you're not high enough. This may be the same story, which is fine. It worked out well last year. I was like, you know what, Matt's right. I should have probably been even a little bit higher on that dude. Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that I've talked about on the show is that fear of getting five guys all jammed up together in the paint. Now, if the Pistons can sort of solve that issue in whatever way, then fine. But even if they don't, he's likely to be out there long enough to beat where he's at right now. So I can't really argue with you on this one. Let's go to number 3, actually, because I'm in total agreement on number 2. I got nothing to add to it.
I think the last couple times that I've been on the show, I've talked about this guy, and I think it was even on that My Guy show last year. We might have had a discussion because of Amen Thompson about his teammate Tari Eason and whether it was going to be Tari's year. And I told you, I don't think it's going to be this year. Just had the surgery in March on his leg, and they still got Dylan Brooks. Well, they don't have Dylan Brooks anymore. And I know some people are still worried about the fact, oh, well, they brought in Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant's a forward too. Kevin Durant is replacing Jalen Green, at least as far as running the half-court offense, be able to create shots for himself and others. That's what Kevin Durant's going to be able to do on this roster. But the Fred VanVleet injury is going to create a domino effect down this rotation that is going to open up opportunity for players to be able to kind of move up a little bit of a level in their role. And Tari Eason coming into the season when Fred VanVleet was looking like he was going to be in his normal Fred VanVleet role, I was a little bit skeptical of how does this work? Do we get Tari in a breakout when we've got Dorian Finney-Smith coming in now? We've got Amen Thompson in a huge role. Jabari Smith Jr. might start. How are we going to fit Tari into this picture? Well, we now have an opportunity because we're going to see Amen Thompson, who is an honorary My Guy for this. I'm not going to talk about him, but I would take Amen Thompson. I will talk about him a little bit because he's great. I would probably take Amen Thompson. I'd be thinking about him at the turn in the first round because we saw last year that his assist rate nearly doubled when Fred VanVleet was off of the court. That is what you're going to see with Amen Thompson, a nightly triple-double threat who also is going to have near league leading steal and block rates on top of it and a really elite field goal percentage. So that's a whole lot of categories that we're filling with Amen Thompson, but it's going to mean that the role that Amen Thompson was going to fill, the kind of terror twin role that him and Tari Eason had last year of creating chaos defensively, creating extra possessions for the Rockets the way that he did last season, guarding the best wings and perimeter players on the other team. Some of that is going to have to be yielded over to Tari Eason, who has a lot of similarities to Amen Thompson in his style of play, certainly in his ability to be able to create chaos. And Tari Eason doesn't need that many minutes to be able to be fantasy relevant. I think we're going to get up to at least 27, 28 minutes this season. Ime Udoka loves to be able to play Eason. And if you have some pause because you saw last year, he's out with leg soreness again. We got away from that by the second half of the season. He was even starting during portions of the second half in the post-All-Star period. And a lot of his minutes last season came with Fred VanVleet off of the court. That's when they like to play him. When instead of slowing things down in the half court, they needed to speed things up. They needed to play in transition where Tari thrives. They needed to be creating chaos and turnovers. And that's what they did when VanVleet was off of the court. They're already saying they're going to need to do a whole lot more of that this season. And I think that's when he's going to be doing it, especially when Kevin Durant is on the bench. So I think Eason is a top 80 value, even in only 27 minutes a night. I think there's also upside that if the shooting, which the volume has continued to tick up all 3 seasons of his career, if the shooting continues to level up and Jabari Smith is not knocking down threes, I think there's potential for Tari Eason to be able to start over Jabari Smith Jr. at points in this season. And you're talking about if he gets to 30 minutes a night, if we get that upside, it's a lot like Amen Thompson, where suddenly we're talking about a guy who could be a top 40 player, who's getting steals at the top of the league, who's getting blocks, rebounds at elite levels. Those rates are elite. So all it is, just sprinkle in the minutes, and suddenly you're getting Tari Eason as a guy who could be in the top 40 of rankings through the second half of the season if he gets those 30-plus minutes a night. But right now, pre-rank of 128, ADP of 123. He's a post-hype sleeper. The hype of Tari, people got bored with it. They've moved on to other guys. There's new buzzy guys that everyone is chasing after. They're forgetting about Tari Eason, but the stat rates are there, and all we need is the opportunity. It's already a value at the minutes that I expect him to get, but create a little bit more opportunity, add in 3 or 4 more minutes, and suddenly you're talking about one of the big breakout players of this season.
Yeah, why do you think and I because he was number 65 in 9-cat last year in only 25 minutes a game. Why do you think people are so down on Tari Eason? And I don't think it's because there's so many forwards there. I feel like that almost gives the general public too much credit of looking at a roster. Is it just because he doesn't or didn't, I shouldn't say doesn't, but is it just because he didn't score that much last season?
The reaction that I was getting from dynasty managers after this offseason was, what happens to, I've been waiting for Tari, but now they traded for Kevin Durant. Now they traded for Dorian Finney-Smith. At least that was the initial reaction to it. There's also a lot of people who looked at it and said, like, he's never healthy. You know, like they spent the last 2 seasons missing a lot of games. And I remind people, in last year, when we were talking about Tari, by the time that we got to the second half of the season, he's averaging almost 30 minutes a night across 21 games in February and March. Whatever minutes they didn't play him back-to-backs, but other than that, he was getting games where he was playing 33, 34 minutes in the second half. So they were not concerned about it anymore, and he wasn't having issues with the leg anymore. So I think this is great. I think we've just kind of come to a period where people have moved on to other things. The hype isn't there anymore. People are forgetting about, even Amen Thompson is getting soaking up some of that hype on the team. People are looking at Reed Shepherd and what Reed Shepherd is going to do this year. I have concerns about Ime Udoka not having the Aaron Holiday club taken out of his bag. I think he's going to lean on that heavily, but I still like Reed too. But Tari's the guy where I'm like, the coach already likes him. He already fits the style of play, and he's at the age where you can reasonably expect further progression in his game. We already know the fantasy game is there, and there's going to be opportunity. I don't see where the reason for pause is here, especially at this value. Getting him as one of the last picks in your draft is absolute theft. You should not walk away from your draft without Tari Eason on your roster.
Yeah, you literally have nothing to lose at that point. Matt, before we get to player number 4, what are you working on these days? Tell me a little bit about what's going down in Matt world.
Yeah, so where you can find everything that I'm doing the first stop, it's here at the Old Man Squad. I've got a weekly podcast that I'm doing with Noah Rubin, the Young Man Squad. We co-hosted the Young Man Squad. If you hear about Tobias Harris here, and you hear about guys who aren't even in the league yet on our podcast, but that meshing, if you can do both of those, you are unbeatable in fantasy. Let me tell you what. And if you want to be able to go deeper, what I do is try to provide resources to make Dynasty basketball a great experience. About 10 years ago, I got really into Dynasty basketball, and I found there were little to no resources available, especially compared to NFL Dynasty, where everybody had a podcast, everybody had their own rankings. There was little to nothing on the Dynasty side. So I started making it, especially during the pandemic, where while some people were learning how to bake bread or, do whatever hobbies, I was creating Dynasty. I was creating dynasty basketball content. So I've been doing rankings, trade calculators, rookie rankings, and, putting together everything that exists in other fantasy dynasty spaces, bringing it to basketball. You can find it all at patreon.com/NBA Dynasty ADP. Go to me on Twitter. You can find all the links to everything there at NBA Dynasty ADP. If you can think of it, I'm putting it out there. I'm going to even be putting out my own redraft rankings for this season coming up later this week. Been cooking those up for both points and categories leagues. So we do it all. We do dynasty, we do redraft, and I'm just looking to make this dynasty, fantasy basketball, all of it be a great experience for people so they keep coming back. I want to build community. I want to have leagues be stronger. I want people to have great experiences, maybe make you some money too. But the ultimate goal here is to make this a hobby and a lifestyle that we all get to enjoy and get more joy out of. And I hope we're doing that.
Yeah, we're all just we're just trying to keep fantasy basketball fun, man. That's like I worry at times that it tips the other way, and this is supposed to be fun. And I really I know you're cranking away at it, and Noah's been amazing. Like the number of shows, the show volume that dude did here with the young man squad, I'm so grateful. And honestly, like I don't have nice enough words for what all of you guys are doing, not just here at Old Man Squad, because this is like my weird little pet project, but like across fantasy basketball. It's the damn best. Again, he is Matt Lawson at NBA Dynasty ADP. He is taking us to player number 4 on the list.
All right, we're sticking with the young man trend here, but this guy's got an old man ankle right now, and I think it's creating a lot of value. It's Zach Edey, who, let's get to the downside right away. From the 2024 Summer League through this offseason, Edey sprained his left ankle 4 different times. And part of this is the reality of a guy who is a former hockey player, who was an Iron Man at Purdue, and just kind of refused to do anything other than just keep trying to play through ankle sprains. And eventually the Grizzlies said, enough, we're going to get a corrective procedure to be able to stabilize the ligaments in this ankle so you stop spraining it over and over again. Similar story to what we saw with like a Steph Curry early on, where it's like, until you get this right, until we actually do the real corrective measures, you got to stop trying to play through pain. And last week we found out that Edey's already been cleared for basketball activities. I think a lot of people saw the headline of, oh, he's not going to be back for 6 to 9 weeks. That was a positive development compared to what we worried might happen, that he might end up lingering into December or January, that they might slow play it with him. So now we're looking at a return window of either early November or late November. So missing around 10 to 20 games. And this is suppressing his value, because I think that this would be one of those guys who was kind of near the top of that big tier of centers that were taking the back out, the Jared Allens of the world, Mark Williams and everything else. Like when you're kind of trying to add a couple more centers to your roster in the second half of the top 100, Zach Edey, I think, would be near the front of that list if it were not for this injury. And the reason is this: we started to see the breakout at the end of last season. He, after the Taylor Jenkins firing, he jumped up to 30-plus minutes a night across 13 games between the regular season, play-in, and playoffs. They leaned on him heavily. He was averaging 15-plus rebounds in that stretch in games in April. And this is a stat set that is basically the same as what we're hoping to be able to get from Mark Williams this year, except you get it 30 spots later. And that's the real appeal. Huge field goal percentage, big rebounds, big blocks, and a free throw percentage in the 70s. And if you can get all of that together, that's top 50 production that is waiting for you on the other side if you can get through this early absence. And I understand it. No one likes to be able to draft a player who's injured straight out of the season. But once you get outside of the top 100, that's where you're willing to say, okay, well, I'm taking someone here that in these kinds of spots, I might be cutting this player anyway who I'm taking in this zone. So I want to be able to at least have somebody, I know there's risk, but I could be taking guys who don't have top 50 upside with a pick outside the top 100 as well. I think he has top 50 upside in this season. And a big part of it is the way that Thomas Isalo used him late in the season. Suddenly we're seeing those big crushing screens for Ja Morant that we thought we were going to be getting when Edey got drafted. They did not use him that way under Taylor Jenkins. And suddenly when they let Zach Edey do Zach Edey things that we had already seen from 3 seasons at Purdue, he looked phenomenal. He was every bit of the player that we hoped he would be. And the last piece of this with Zach Edey is that there was concern, this guy's just going to be the next Boban Marjanovic. Like, yeah, he's huge, and in spurts, it can look really impressive, but he's not going to be able to stay on the court defensively. Well, I know we all had to avert our eyes based on how some of the games went, but if you watch the playoffs with the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Memphis Grizzlies, Zach Edey held his own and stayed on the court. Even being out there against some of the 5-out spacing lineups that the Thunder had, he moves far better than people thought he was going to in the NBA. I think he can be a full minute center, but he doesn't need to be a guy who's playing 30-plus minutes a night based on the stat set to be super productive. I think this season we could see him at around 27 minutes per night, get around 55 games played, and you're talking about 60% from the field, 13 points, 11 rebounds, 1.5 blocks. And like I said before, that free throw percentage in the 70s that doesn't kill you. To get that from a big man that you're getting outside of the top 100, I'm willing to stomach missing some games in November to be able to get to the other side of it, because I think the reward is going to be enormous, just like Zach Edey is.
Yeah, he is enormous. I'm so glad that that was the last thing you said. He is, like, I would recommend everybody just watch a Zach Edey ball game just to see how obscenely large this man is. Yahoo's got him listed at 7'4", 305. It's a sight, man. It is a scene. And by the way, you just talked through basically where I've been with Edey throughout this entire run-up, which was I was really high on him, waiting to find out how much time we were going to miss. Now, one of my tenets is I just don't really draft guys that are injured to start the year. I find it's hard to kind of come back from that in head-to-head. I guess there's a little bit of a difference there because of how late he's going, where if you can stash him, if you can somehow weather a few weeks, the hope without other guys on your team going down, maybe it comes down to, Matt, how many IL slots your league has. Like if it's 3, it's a much easier decision because, great, use your 12th round pick on Zach Edey, stash him. Like odds are you're not going to have 3 other IL guys in the first 3 weeks of the year, but maybe you do, and just try to, like, you know, you wear it for 1 or 2 weeks. If you're in a 1 IL slot league, then you probably can't do it because someone's going to get hurt, and then you're just wearing zeros. And if you're in a games cap league, it's a totally different discussion altogether. I'm trying my best to evolve as a human and talk more about standard head-to-head leagues and not just straight games cap roto. I think I've done okay with that. I love Zach Edey's potential for this year. I'm totally 180% with you on that. I just think people need to sort of assess where their league is at, where they're in terms of IL stuff. Can they weather that storm? Is that, we probably agree on all of that, yeah?
I totally agree. And that's why my number 5 is the answer to what I knew you were going to say from listening for years of this show, to say, well, you can't draft a guy who's injured. Well, let me give you a free square guy. He does not have an ADP. His pre-rank is in the 300s.
Oh my God.
And I you're probably not going to have to even draft it. I think you might have to draft this guy after the preseason, because I think it's going to change some perspective. But I'm talking about Neemias Queta for the Boston Celtics. And let me tell you what this situation is really about. This is the fact that the Boston Celtics have come into the season with, I think, only one viable NBA center. And they barely have anybody at power forward who's even rotation ready in this team. This is a wasteland. Before we talk about Queta, let's talk about his competition. We're talking about a team that, if I told you after they won the championship a couple years ago, they're going to go into this 25-26 season and they're not going to have Kristaps Porzingis, they're not going to have Al Horford, they're not going to have Luke Cornett, they're not going to have Jason Tatum, they're not going to have Drew Holiday anymore, and they're not going to replace any of those guys with anyone who is a viable rotation player, or at least has proven themselves to be able to fill in those rotation spots that are missing. So over the last 2 seasons, what has happened when Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford are unavailable? They started Neemias Queta, and when he got into the game, he played 25 minutes per game. He proved himself to be a rotation-worthy NBA center. He's going to give you that big field goal percentage, rebounds, blocks, traditional big man stat set. And just like we talked about with Zach Edey, the free throw percentage, actually pretty decent. So this is a guy who we saw in Eurobasket for Portugal go out there, look pretty good. The Boston Media Day was both Brad Stevens and Joe Mazzulla saying that Neemias Queta has earned this opportunity. They didn't say that he was the starter for sure, but they said this is a guy who's been with our program for 2 years. He was down in Maine with the Red Claws. He helped us last year when we needed him to be able to fill in. He understands what we want to do and what we're about, and he's earned this opportunity. And yet, People are completely ignoring him when he could potentially be the starting center for the Boston Celtics, playing minutes in the mid to upper 20s straight out of the gate, has a good fantasy stat set, and the competition is Luka Garza, who is a novelty store center who will jack up threes and will hustle energy, rebound it, but has no ability to be able to move on the basketball court at the level that an NBA center now needs to be able to do. It is Xavier Tillman, who the Celtics themselves have said is a power forward. They view him as a power forward. His knees cannot handle being on the court more than maybe 15 minutes a game. He had so much issues with swelling last year, some positive reports this year, but I think he's going to have a minor role at best. And then, I'm sorry, everyone, Chris Boucher is not an NBA center. He doesn't have the weight to be able to play maybe even power forward on the interior in the NBA. He's a perimeter player. He shot really well for Toronto last year. They weren't interested in bringing him back. I think Chris Boucher is a nice player. I think he could be good in fantasy this year, but he's not going to be able to anchor an NBA defense. And they want to at least be competitive early on. They have too many prideful players. They have too many guys who are coming out for this season trying to be able to keep this team afloat with Jason Tatum gone. And even if the organization haven't given them the tools to be able to win this season, I think at least early on they're going to try to, and their only viable option to be able to do that is to be able to play Queta. So if you need to be able to bridge the gap for some of these injured players, and if you want to be able to take a flyer for free that might just be able to get onto your roster after your draft, after you're stashing some guys in IR and looking to the waiver wire, I think Neemias Queta could end up being a guy who obviously destroys his non-existent ADP, but also could be someone who gives you top 75-ish production if he's playing the minutes that I think he could, around 25, 26, 27 minutes a night. That could be top 75 production from this guy because he's got a good big man stat set. He's proven himself already, and the competition is zero.
Yeah, I like what you've done here, Matt. I like that you went dominoes on these last two. You take the injured one, you stash him, you pick up the other one. That was clever. Well played, sir. Well played. Yeah, this was one of those ones where, so I was like, this is a couple weeks ago now. I was sort of like kicking around, looking through some Yahoo stuff to see if I could update my data. And he was listed as like the most added player in fantasy. So it was leagues that had already drafted by like September 12th or whatever it was. And people were adding Queta. And I think it was probably that same phenomenon that you're talking about where they were like, well, one of my guys just got an IL tag. I got this extra spot. Here's a guy who's probably going to start. What do you think? And this will be my last question because I know the caffeine's going to wear off and I don't want to keep you when you need to go get a nap in. Kick this damn kid cold. By the way, dads always get it worse. I don't care what anybody says. What do you think the stat set could look like for Queta?
Yeah, so I think that this is going to be a guy who's going to be able to give you, field goal percentage around that 60%, strong center level. Everything's kind of at the rim. He's a big guy, so he's going to be able to do that for you. The rebounds, probably the upper single digits, kind of like an 8 at peak. Maybe he gets to 9 if the minutes get high enough, but probably more around 8 rebounds. And then I think he can get up around that, like block and a half level if the minutes are really high. Otherwise, it's going to be the 1.2, 1.3 where it's helpful for you. And again, it's the free throw percentage that doesn't kill you to be able to do it. So it's not eye-popping, but from a 9-category perspective, it fills in that puzzle piece that you need to have in your stat line of a big man to be able to boost your field goal percentage, give you some of those rebounds. And there's going to be nights where the matchup works better. And I think there's going to be matchup dependent in a lot of ways. I think he'll play every night, but I think there's going to be nights where the other team has a big opposing center, where especially he's going to be kind of a stream god where okay, they're dealing with some real centers in this matchup. They're going to have to play Queta. They're not going to be able to sacrifice Luka Garza to, like Nikola Jokic, like if it's a game where Embiid is actually playing, like they're not going to be able to just throw out a guy who's undersized and undermatched. They're going to have a real center body in there where you're going to know this is one of those nights to be able to get Queta in there.
The Portuguese sensation is player number 5. To recap, Cooper Flagg, not enough hype. Ausar Thompson, also not enough hype. Tari Eason, why do we all hate him so? Zach Edey, a stash and blitz, and Neemias Queta, the number 5 man on the list. Matt Lawson, after a ridiculous 2024 showing, is coming in guns blazing for 2025. At NBA Dynasty ADP, I'm getting you the hell out of here so you can go and start to kick this illness. I got to say, man, you had all the energy in the universe, and you can give caffeine as much credit as you want, but that was damn impressive for a man who's sick.
I love this stuff, and I hope that comes through in this. I think about it. I'm passionate about it. This is my favorite time of the year, and I really mean this portion before, when we're getting all of the information at the last second and figuring out what's going to happen, because everything that we think from this offseason is going to prove to be wrong. And it happens every single season. We all get this group think by the end of it that we've got it figured out. Maybe we disagree on a few little things, but for the most part, we've kind of figured out, oh, this team's in this tier. This player is going to be the breakout. This guy's washed. And then the NBA shakes everything up, throws it out on the table, and it's different than we could possibly ever expect. So I love this. I can't wait for preseason games to start. I think there's value in watching it. I think there's value in seeing what coaches are doing with rotations. There's always things that surprise. There's opportunity for breakouts from that. So I cannot wait to be able to see that. And I just can't wait to get into this season. It's going to be a great NBA season. I know it's already a weird one because so many players that we expected to be able to draft early on are not available, but it's all the more reason that watching shows like this and really digging in can give you the advantage in your league and make this a great season for you. Dan, thank you for having me back on. I love it, and I really appreciated the opportunity to be able to talk with you about this.
You're my dude. Go be dead for a little bit. Feel better, Matt. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
I have more Matt hype I wanted to do, but I could tell that dude, and I think we've all been there, where like you have a really nasty cold or flu or whatever his kids gave him, and you're like willing your way through and you're fighting it and you're giving full energy, and then you're done and you feel like super woozy and you realize that you overdid it. So I pretty much just had to kick that guy off the show because I know Matt was going to keep going because he does love this stuff and he's like one of the best guests ever. So goodbye, Matt. Go feel better. Everybody check out his stuff. If you play Dynasty, as he mentioned, you can see him on Noah's show, the Young Mad Squad fantasy basketball show that's here on this Old Man Squad network. You can check out all of his stuff at his Patreon account. Just go follow him on social media if you want to see what he's all about. It's NBA Dynasty ADP. This show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. I forgot to tell you guys about them in the middle of the program. We were talking about the Boston Celtics and Neemias Queta there at the end of the program. Celtics season win total at FanDuel is 41.5. I think the Celtics accidentally win more games than that this year, even though they probably shouldn't. That's where I've been leaning on that play over at FanDuel, and I feel that way about it. I also did a mock draft that Matt Lawson was in. You guys, we talked about it with Josh Lloyd. Matt had, what pick was Lawson? He was right at the front end of this thing, I think, wasn't he? I can double check this. No, where was Matt? There he was. Seventh pick. So he had an Anthony Edwards team that we're going to talk about on the program as soon as he's feeling better, basically. So check that out. That mock draft was held with our friends over at Fantrax, which you can sign up and play fantasy basketball over there at fantrax.com/oldmansquad. I know I'm forgetting something here at the end of the show. I'm sure it'll hit me as soon as I'm done. I just kindly ask you all, if you've enjoyed what we've done here, please hit that like button. Please subscribe to Old Man Squad, no matter how you're taking in the content. We do these shows almost 2 a day for the entirety of the regular season, including streaming episodes near the end of the year. We have buys and sell episodes. We got all kinds of stuff. There is no break. No break. I go year-round on this program, so I really would appreciate your subscription. I am also on Twitter. I do a lot of work there during the regular season. Not as much here during the run-up, although admittedly, I probably should do more. That is at Dan Besbris, DanBesbris. Matt Lawson, a proud member of the Keep Fantasy Basketball Fun contingent here, and I am having fun whenever I talk to the great Matt Lawson. If you play Dynasty or if you want to give it a chance, he is also your preeminent starting point there. Big thank you to Matt for coming on while sick. I'm Dan. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for your subscriptions and your likes. We'll see you again very soon. So long from Old Man Squad. Bye.